We'll wait a couple seconds just because.
All right, and I think we're all set. We've got about 27 people on.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to display that as a Word document, I think. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This meeting will be recorded, so it'll be available at some point later if you want to listen to it all again. And we'll have some minutes later also. So I'm Ann Vosbrink. I'm the EMS data manager for the state of Arizona for the AZ-PIERS system. And any bureau announcements? I don't know. Is Julia on? Julia?
I think she'll be on later.
Okay. I don't think we have anything super major. I mean, you guys have heard a lot of them before. We're still looking for a bureau chief and that sort of thing. So let's just move on to reminders and announcements. I want to make sure we can get through as much of this agenda as possible within the hour so I can respect everybody's time. I never know if these things are going to go faster or slower. We'll see how it goes. I put a note on my door, like with block letter, and telling my kids, because it's summer, even though they're teenagers and they're off, to please not come in and let the dogs in. But we'll see how well that goes in case you guys later get dogs barking or kids asking questions. Okay, so for AZ-PIERS agencies that use the enterprise license, so those of you that directly enter into the system, use Elite Field, it's basically your system. It's just that you're not exporting directly to the system because you're already in the system. You should be receiving, hopefully, a report every Monday of any missing mandatory fields. If you're not getting the report, it should mean that you don't have any missing mandatory fields. But if you're concerned, let me know and I will double check to make sure that there has been one scheduled to send to you. This is really important for several reasons. Not only the fact that if you ever move on to your own license, that stuff will fail to send to us without those mandatory fields. It's not a choice. It's something that NEMS has in there. It's not something that state controls. So just get in the habit of making sure people fill those in, because it won't come to us otherwise if you ever use a different system. And then also none of the data will go to NEMSIS with those mandatory fields missing, because it will fail for the same reason. And then if you have a CON or you, which I think most agencies, I don't know about ones that only do interfacility, but you have to complete this HB 2609 report response times when you do your renewal. I don't know a ton of details on the regulatory side. That report is dependent on most of those mandatory elements being filled out. If you don't fill out the mandatory elements, then a lot of your population of your runs won't necessarily be in the report, which that ends up looking kind of funky when they get turned in for licensing and things like that. So please do make sure that if you got a report, I think I sent out one for all of missing 2024 information, and then every Monday you should be getting one that's year-to-date 2025. And as you fix those things, they should disappear off that report because they won't be missing anymore. So if you have any questions on how to use that, how to find things, I know I sent out some tools, but I know not everybody's having an easy time figuring out how to find some of those runs using Report Writer if they don't have an incident number or a time in there. A lot of times those are stuff that someone started and then they kind of lost it because they didn't put a time or incident number in there. They couldn't find it, so they started another one. And I did exclude anything where the status equals test record. So if those are actually test cases you want to keep and you don't want them flagged as stuff needs to be filled in, then make sure you change the status. And then I have a super exciting announcement that I'm excited about. I don't know about everyone else. Not everybody, because I ended up just running out of energy last night. But most agencies should have gotten a snapshot report, which is new, and a data quality report that is new. So right now, hopefully all agencies get 3 weekly reports and 1 monthly report. So the monthly report is your median validation score, and weekly reports are things like runs per month, and then any validation issues, and then all the validation issues with an incident number so that you have examples in a CSV format. But it's become increasingly difficult for me to manage those because it's 4 reports per agency, 180 agencies come and go. And I know that some of the reports have stopped working and I don't know which ones haven't. So one thing I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I know I displayed some of this at a previous meeting, was create kind of a report where it's one report. So if I have to change things on it or something's not working right, I don't have to go into 180 different reports, which generally isn't going to happen. And also it allows me to do neat little improvements and change things as we go without making, spending as much time doing that and then not doing other things. So this is a group report. For those of you who are familiar with ImageTrend, if you're not, don't worry about it. But basically it means that I built a bunch of little reports and then I put them all in one report that sends together. So hopefully everyone got a monthly data quality report. I'm going to start sending out a weekly one also. So the monthly one will come out, I think right now I have it scheduled from now on to come on like the 5th of the month. And it will reflect the previous full month. I had it sent last night. And so that, well, actually it was early this morning. And that report is actually it's for the previous full month. But in the future, you'll get that once a month, but you'll also start getting, once I get it set up to ship, a weekly report that just will reflect the last 1 week. It's going to be very, very similar to, it's going to be actually identical to the monthly report, but just it's every week. And it only reflects the previous 1 week. So it's a little bit different than the ones you get separately now. If you're happy with this new weekly report that comes out that just reflects the one previous week as opposed to, it's kind of been overlapping 2 weeks back, and you, between that and the monthly one, you're happy and you don't want to receive the other ones, you're welcome to unsubscribe. You should be able to unsubscribe within the email from the separate reports. You're welcome to still get them all until the reports run out, however you would like to do it. And because this is a new way of me doing it, and where I'm basically putting everybody on one report, instead of individually creating a report for each agency, sometimes I don't know exactly if something's going to show up kind of funky on your end. If you have access to 3 different agencies at the rescue service admin level, for whatever reason, you actually are getting all 3 of those agencies on there. That's how it's supposed to work, and they'll be divided out by agency. But if you're like, oh, I don't even work there anymore, well, then you still have access in our system at some level, and we need to take care of that. So let me know if you see anything weird. Let me know if something comes up strange. I get copied on the report, but I get copied on it for every agency all at once, so it doesn't reflect what you're seeing exactly. But I hope you guys are happy with them. I think it's a step forward for larger volume agencies. And if you notice your report is being truncated at the end, then let me know. I kind of had to guess. For larger volume agencies, for the monthly and the weekly data quality reports, you're going to get all the same tables as everyone else, but the table that has each individual validation issue, along with an incident number, will be coming separately in a CSV, because when I did some testing, the group reports only allow 500 lines per report. And so in some cases, especially with the monthly data quality one, if you have over 500 runs and every single one of them, you don't fill this one thing out, it was to the point where it only showed you some of it, and then it would be cut off at the bottom. And I didn't want that to be a problem. So for larger agencies that I were guessing, might have that issue, I set it up where you get all the tables in a PDF and then a separate additional report where it's in CSV format, because there's no limitation with CSVs. Well, I think it's like 1 million, but we're at that point, we've got other problems. And so please look for both of those. I created those separately. And then all the other agencies, you should be getting one PDF report with everything on it. I know it's a PDF. I debated between PDF and CSV, but PDF looks a little better. And it's not like you have to go through and check these off. They're just for you to use as examples to try to find some of the issues. So that's the data quality report. And then when I displayed last time that I was going to do something like this, I also had some other tables on there. And I ended up kind of creating 2 different reports because I just thought they were kind of distinctly different. Plus, they're different. They could be used for different purposes. So I created a snapshot report. I don't know what else to call it. If you have a better name, let me know. And it shows just some really kind of neat basic demographic data from what we see. So partly it's kind of data quality also, because if you look at it, and this is a good way to check if you're sending a procedure that you don't think you're sending because the wrong code's being sent. So you know you're not doing something, but yet it's showing up 475 times for that last month. Then probably there's something going on. This is the information we have. So if you use our system directly, it's going to be a reflection exactly of what you are. If you don't, then it could be slightly different. You're welcome to use it for any purposes you want. I just wanted to let you know that it's supposed to kind of give you some value for the data, but also it'll hopefully help us find issues before we don't realize they're going on. A lot of times, like I'll have a hospital let me know that this doesn't make sense, that this agency is doing this, and it's because we find out that something's not being sent over correctly. But since we mostly get codes, we're not going to know that that's not the case. So please take a look at those. Most agencies should have gotten your snapshot report this morning. All agencies hopefully would have gotten their data quality monthly report. Like I said, I'm going to start sending out a weekly one soon that'll just reflect the last week for the data quality, because it's a lot more useful to work on it as you go and then see things actually improve by the time the next monthly report runs. And then the snapshot one, I think most agencies should have gotten. There's still a few I need to add. If you didn't get it, you're welcome to email me and see if maybe, I try to compile everybody who's getting the other reports and look at the ones that are getting the PEEP reports and everything else, but I'm sure I made some mistakes as far as leaving people out, which is unintentional, and I apologize. So, also, any feedback on either of those reports, formats, things that are included. I want to acknowledge that I had some agencies help me kind of review their own reports as kind of a demo to let me know what they thought of it. Brittany at Scottsdale did a lot of work on it, and I just wanted to say thank you. And Allison Welsh also helped review it, because it's really supposed to be a report that's valuable to you guys, not just what I find interesting. So anyway, you should have those. I'm super excited. And if you have any feedback, I'm happy to take it. All right. If you are a Premier EMS agency, you should have received, I'm talking about reports a lot, your out-of-hospital cardiac arrest share data quality. So not the share report where it tells you about survival and things like that, but the PEEP share data quality report went out, hopefully, to everybody on June 12th. So once again, you're supposed to receive that, or you think you're supposed to be on that list in your Premier EMS agency, then let me know and we can get you added. So it's a scheduled report that right now goes out on the 12th of the month. If for some reason we need to change that to a different day, that's fine. But that's the way it is right now. And then speaking of share reports, I get questions occasionally about a share report regarding the actual cardiac arrest, like you used to get, or something similar to that from share. So not the data quality, but actually using the data to explain kind of what the picture of cardiac arrests are in Arizona. And they are hoping that they're targeting September 2025 for that report. I know it's been a while, but with transitioning the systems, the hospitals are still kind of getting the last of their data caught up and entered after the transition. And without that, we obviously wouldn't have a very complete report. So they're getting closer. And our team is really excited to provide that. I do not run that report. We have a bunch of very, very smart people who are working on that. But I just wanted to let you know, if you're interested, that September 2025 is when they're targeting for those participating agencies. All right. I have one more announcement, and then I can take questions before we go on to the next agenda item. For those of you that use AZ-PIERS or use the report writer in AZ-PIERS, I just wanted to let you know you're going to see something new. When you go into tools, in addition to report writer, there's something called like next gen report writer. There is a new generation of report writer that is now live. It does not have all the features of the existing report writer. We're not taking away the old report writer. In fact, I'm still going to use the old report writer until I can migrate some of my things and not have to rebuild them, hopefully. But I wanted to let you know it's there. You're welcome to play around with it. You're not going to hurt anything. It doesn't write back to anything. It just, allows you to create reports, but it'll look different. In some ways, it's more intuitive the way you build things, but so not all the features are there, but they are planning on adding everything we have currently, plus a lot more to it. So if you want to check it out, it should be available in AZ-PIERS under tool and then next gen. I don't know if you have your own system. If you've got it yet, if you do, then you already knew about it. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on any of those announcements before I move on to the next item?
It looks like Julia has joined. I didn't know if you, Julia, if you have.
Yeah, and I'm putting her on the spot, but Julia, if you don't have anything off the top of your head, it is fine. Do you have any bureau announcements besides the fact that we're still looking for a bureau chief that you can think of?
I don't think so. I don't think I have anything else.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything. It was probably mentioned about 25 times so far. Nothing new since then. Okay, good.
I'll just add that we're getting ready for the July 10 public meetings.
Mm-hmm.
The TEPI group, the education committee, protocols, medications, and devices, and PACES.
So yeah, the TEPI is the trauma and EMS performance improvement. I think so that it's kind of, what is it? It's under EMS Council, right? Like it
supports all the statutory.
Yeah. All right, thanks. So please attend those if you get a chance. They're virtual. I think there's in-person option too. And they usually provide a lot of good information, to be honest. I actually learn a lot out of them too. Because it's not just the Bureau talking, it's usually us kind of discussing issues and questions, or, you know, maybe a new medication is being considered, that kind of stuff. All right, I'm going to move on to it doesn't sound very descriptive, and I didn't know how to title this section, so I just called it system housekeeping. So it's kind of like those little, hey, don't forget, remember, please do this as far as your actual data. So all of you probably get, hopefully, an email whenever I do a new schematron. It's a whole process, and I won't make you, I think I've gone through it in previous meetings, but basically we request it to be done, ImageTrim builds it, we send it to NEMSA, NEMSA has to prove it, we get it back, and there's a whole thing that we go through. So if you're an agency that uses their system directly, you don't have to do anything. So that's easy. If you have your own ImageTrim system, then once it gets posted to the library, you have to download it and apply it. If you don't, then you don't have the new schematron. And I'll get to why that's important in a minute. If you have another vendor, it just depends on how your vendor does it. Some vendors have their agencies apply their own schematrons. I know at least, I don't know all Zoll, for example, but I know at least some do that. And then other vendors, I don't know how much, like maybe you have to put in a help ticket. I do copy all the vendors that I have on my contact list on that email as well. But it's one of those things that, you know, don't assume your vendor is going to do it without you asking, because you're the client. And a lot of times they don't necessarily go ahead and do something unless you put in a request, but you know your vendor better than anyone. So just keep that in mind, that it may not be an automatic process. But when you get those emails, please, please, please make sure that you do apply that new schematron, because a schematron is kind of like we have a schema, we have a national schematron, and we have a state schematron. And the state schematron is the one that I send out. And all it basically is kind of like a fine mesh filter. And every state does theirs differently as far as what they allow and what they're going to kick back. For the most part, one of our big things is if you have a patient that went to a destination of any kind, you have to send a code, what that destination is, and it has to be a recognized code. So if you have a new destination to add, let me know, and then I add it. It's not automatic, but like the end of June, we should be having a new schematron come out end of June, early July, with a few new destination facilities added. If you know of a hospital opening, please let me know, because I try to find out if there's a code I can get in advance so we don't have to wait for it to process. But if you don't apply that new schematron, what tends to happen is I'll apply to my system. So if you were to send me that new code and that new facility, my system will accept it because it will recognize it. But if you don't apply that schematron to your system will reject sending it because it doesn't recognize it. Because my schematron is telling your system, this isn't a recognized code, so this is failing. We're not gonna, you know, it may try to export it, but it will fail. If you haven't applied the most recent schematron, sometimes the opposite happens. It'll send it to me because it doesn't know, and then it'll fail on my end, which is also no fun because you may not even realize if you don't look. I don't know how it shows up on everyone's system. So applying that updated schematron is important. for many reasons, but one of them is if you have a new hospital that's opened and I add it to my system and I put it in the new schematron and you don't apply it to yours, it's a very good chance that you're going to keep sending that and it's going to keep failing. I'll never get those records, and I won't get them to even tell you that they're failing. Like, they won't make it out. So please make sure that you keep up with the schematron. If you have questions or concerns, you can ask me, you can ask your vendor. But make sure that's part of your process when you see that email, or for image trend people with the library that you get it from, you can subscribe to have it notify you when there's an update. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of mention that as a housekeeping thing, because I've seen several issues with this in the last couple months, so it's still a relevant item. Kind of connected to that, please make sure that you know how in your system, if not, reach out to your vendor. It's super important to kind of occasionally go in. If you're a large agency, I would do it very frequently. If you're a smaller one with less volume, maybe once a week. Just go in and check and see if you don't have as many exports as you would expect. So one thing that can happen is if you have criteria set up where it only exports if, I don't know, you've marked it as some status of closed or whatever you have in your system. Well, if you didn't do that, it's not even going to try to export. You may not realize it's not failing. There's nothing popping up at you. It just hasn't gone. And once again, I'm not going to know, except for your numbers are really low and maybe we'll notice. But if there's only a few that aren't going, we generally don't until someone complains, like a hospital, or we realize when we run the HB2609 reports that you're not getting what you think you're supposed to get. So please keep an eye on stuff just not sending at all because your criteria. On the same note, look to see if stuff tried to send and failed. And then if something's sent successfully, there's a third kind of thing where it fails to post. So it's kind of like the mail. You can put it in the mail and you can send it to me, so it's exported properly. But if it gets to AZ-PIERS and it rejects it, these are basically ones where it's saying, and return to sender, we're not going to take this. So however in your system, there's so many different vendors out there. I don't know how it is, and I don't know if everyone even has necessarily access to this, but make sure you talk to your vendor and see if they have a report they can run for you every once in a while or whatever. Or you can kind of see if these things are going on, because a little bit of that will save you a lot of headache on like a Friday when we determine that all of a sudden we don't have all of these things and we need to get them. So keep an eye on that. Use your data quality reports, please, because that's what they're for, is to hopefully catch things before we see a little thing of ice and find out it's a giant iceberg hiding below it. We want to catch things when there's smaller issues. It just makes it less painful for everybody. And if you ever have issues and you want to meet with me or meet with your vendor or have me and your vendor meet with you, that is totally fine. I do it all the time. I can help coordinate those kind of meetings. Sometimes it is stuff that the vendor and I can work on. Sometimes it's stuff you and the vendor can work on. A lot of times the vendor can do things, but they're not going to do it without your okay. So it's helpful for us all to have a meeting, or sometimes it's just for you and your vendor to meet. But a lot of the issues that we come across aren't things that agencies can necessarily solve themselves. Some of them they are, but a lot of times there might be just some glitch, and you're not going to know your system usually as well as the vendor. I don't know my system as well as our vendor knows it, because you don't use all parts of it. So please keep that in mind. And then just another kind of housekeeping thing, just people retire, people rotate in and out of jobs, people move, whatever the reason is. For those of you that are contacts right now, I realize this one more thing to remember. I don't know if it's like a sticky note and stick it on the tech board, but when someone rotates out of your job, if you are one of the people that I need to send data stuff to, please make sure that someone contacts me. Even if you update your roster, which is a very good thing, because that's how we get the updated contact information, I'm not going to know that they're the new person to send the data to, that they're the person you want to get some of this data quality information and repeat reports. So please notify me, because it actually is a manual process for me to add people to reports or take them off. Some agencies have set up like a generic email where it's their agency, so they must have people, hopefully on that side, they're having someone else check it if someone leaves that role. But just please keep that in mind, because I think there's a fair amount when I started sending out stuff yesterday where I realized none of those people are in the system anymore. And I'm like, well, then nobody's getting that report. And there's not that many, but I think it's pretty easy to have it happen. So it's not a super high priority to think about changing your AZ-PIERS data contact when you rotate jobs. But if someone can put that someplace, it'll just mean that we'll have less drops in information. All right, that's it for housekeeping. Does anybody have any questions on all of that? I threw a lot at you. And I talk fast. I say it's a Midwestern thing. I don't know if it is. Okay. And you're welcome to email me later if you want to put stuff in the chat. You can put stuff in the chat. I always forget to check the chat, but Shelly's really good at putting in the chat, so we can do that.
Yeah, we're all clear. Nothing in the chat right now.
Thank you. And then let's go on then to updates to the current data standard. So I say this many times, but I think there's always going to be somebody that has no idea what I'm talking about, and so I want to cover it for that. Our current standard that we accept is, we just call it 3.5, but it's actually 3.50, and the reason that matters is I'm going to talk about 3.51, which is a minor change coming up. So just talking about the current version we're on right now, there is one kind of change, and I wanted to go through it very high level and just kind of talk about what it means for you guys, and then also just encourage you to reach out to me and your vendors if you have questions, because we've been working on this change a lot at the national level between the vendors and states and BEMSTS, just trying to figure out how we're going to do that. The change was made in not our normal change cycle, which is a lot more difficult than you would think. So there was some changes at the national level. There was a lot of presidential executive orders that came out, and for federal entities, they have to go by those executive order. States, kind of have their own purview. So all states are dealing with this. Well, most of us are dealing with it pretty similarly, but the long and the short of it is, one of the data elements that has been in our database for a long time, which is ePatient 13, gender, okay, is being deprecated at the national level, but we're not deprecating at the state level. So if you do what you're doing right now, you're fine. You just do what you do right now. There will be an additional data element that has been added. Some systems already have it. I'm not taking it yet because we have to go through this whole process with software patches called critical patches, and there's 2 of them at the national. Don't worry about that, except for to know that it's kind of like everybody has to go in the right order or everything falls over and things fail. So this new data element, which is sex, and it's ePatient 25, for those of you that are interested. It's pretty dang similar to gender, but as far as the computer system goes, it's completely different and completely new. It has a different tag with it. The value numbers are different. So the computer sees it as software sees it as a completely separate thing. The XML structure, when we bring in all the data, is completely different. So it's like a completely new element, only it probably will not apply that way when you actually are doing it in the field for, documentation. So currently, right now, we require gender, which is ePatient 13. As a state, we're still going to require gender, which is ePatient 13, going forward. There's multiple reasons for this. One, for the amount of people that are on this call, there's a lot of agencies that just are completely out of the loop. And if we start rejecting things or changing things and requiring different things, it ends up causing a lot of issues. It also would mean a lot of changes to our validation rules, anything that had to do with gender, and our schematron, which is also another thing that everyone has to keep up on. And of the statutes that require reporting in our states, which is the opioid overdose statute, which is all agencies licensed or not. And then obviously the Article 9, Article 7 for AIR and CON holders specifically states gender. So to stick in line with the rules and just to make everything hopefully as little of a pain for you guys as possible, we're just going to stick to how we do it now. So require gender. We will, once everything starts, and I'll start sending out emails like critical patches in, and if you guys want to start sending things, I'll coordinate with the vendors. We will accept sex. Once our system has been updated to accept it, which it's not yet, so please don't, if your vendor has it, please don't try to send it to us. Your whole record will fail because it'll be an unrecognized thing. It looks like a germ in the code. It doesn't know what the heck is going on. So we will accept sex as optional. If you want to fill both of them out, you are absolutely welcome to. If you want to just keep filling out gender and sending it to us, you're absolutely welcome to. If you have some other issue, if you are a federal entity and you have to comply with this, then, you know, we can have a talk offline. Probably what we'll suggest you do is mapping it so that you're going to meet all the compliance on our side and you're still collecting what you want. I don't have a ton of answers as to how this is going to affect various things. I've gotten some questions. I've asked some nationally. Due to a lot of changes nationally, we don't have a lot of answers. Plus, this is something that's never happened before. I think the word of 2025 is going to be unprecedented. So we don't know. But we're going to go do our best. And my goal with this is to make it as little of a disruption as possible for you guys and the guys in the field, and try to be as flexible as we can while still sticking with our statutory rules. So hopefully that explains it at a high enough level. If you're hearing about this sex versus gender and all these changes, just know, as far as the state is concerned, if you continue to do it as you are now with gender, you're good. If you want to give us both, once we can accept the new element, totally fine. And then as a state, we determine how we're going to try to provide data to EMSs, you know, and we're committed to doing that. So we're going to figure out a way to make sure they have the data that they need also. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that? If you haven't heard about this, that might be kind of a lot, but we have months before this is, I think we'll hopefully start accepting ePatient 25 if you're interested in sending it in September is when I'm thinking the critical patch, because we have to make sure that our system not only has it in our system, but that it's in our reporting system so that if you send things and there's a problem, I can actually hopefully answer your questions. So I'm guessing that we will apply the first critical patch in September, which will allow us to accept sex. So it's not something that you would even, I mean, you can just, if you want to ignore it till after your summer holidays or whatever, feel free. You might want to discuss with your leadership, depending on your organization's structure. And then we just had a meeting yesterday with BEMSTS, but tentatively, it looks like it'll have to be included to be included. It can be included with a not value, include is not. So even if you don't collect it, your vendor will deal with it. If you don't collect sex, your vendor will deal with it, and they will just include it in the code as not recorded or just in there as blank. They just have to have that code structure in there. That part will kick in somewhere around early November. So we'll have a couple months in between when we can take it, and in between where if it's not in there, even if it's blank, and like I said, this is more of your vendor to worry about, but make sure you're aware, your record will get rejected. And there's going to be some of that. I mean, no change like this is without issues. And like I said, this is not an easy timeline. It seems like it should be, but it's not. It takes, and this is in the middle of all the vendors trying to get certified for 351. So a lot of that is actually behind now because the vendors have to pass NEMSIS compliance for the first and second critical patches. And those have a deadline. So a lot of the 351's gotten pushed back a little bit. So if you knew about 351 coming and you haven't heard anything from your vendor and nothing's there, that's why. So we'll talk about that next. But if anybody has any questions at all, let me know. All right. So let's go on to, hopefully everybody's still awake. We only really have 2 items left. So if we don't get to the last one, the data quality focus item, I'll probably just mention it offhand. It's not that big of a deal and we can do it next time. Sorry, coffee. So let's talk about some highlights in the V35 timeline. So I'm going to show you a document in a minute that has some of the highlights that I picked out from the change log between 350, which is what we're on now, and 351, which we will begin to accept at some point. The tentative plan is, like I said, we're kind of on hold because everything else now got shifted back, and you know, is that we will start accepting 351 in 2026. Whether that is in January or not, I don't know. Maybe it'll be a little sooner, but the way we do it in Arizona right now, in case you guys have worked in other states, some states have a hard switch over. People have different reasons they have to do things. A lot of times they're in statute. And for us, what we normally have done and what I want to continue to do is start accepting 351, but not stop accepting 350 for a while. So we kind of have this overlap. The difference between 350 and 351 is minor compared to the differences between 34 and 35. So if you're like me and you're still mentally recovering from 34 to 35, it won't be as traumatic. There's not that many changes. There's a few things, and there's kind of some new things that have been added and that kind of thing, but that's why it's a 0.1 and not 36. So my goal is to start accepting data in 2026 early. I don't think we'll make the late 2025, but we'll see. And I don't think there's almost any vendors right now that have their NEMSIS 351 compliance anyway, so you're not missing the boat at all. And then we'll continue to accept 350 for a while. I don't know how long, probably 6 months to a year. They're not that different. And once NEMSIS stops accepting 350, we will absolutely, that will be for sure, we'll stop accepting 350 then, if not before. But that's not scheduled for a while either. So, okay. So with the idea that this is something that we're not even going to start accepting till the end of this year, at the beginning of next, I wanted to give you guys a few highlights of what I went over when I kind of looked through all the changelog things. All right. And we'll see if I can present this here. We tried before, Shelley, so I'm confident. And I need to figure out how to make this not look so.
Okay, I can see it. If you want to make it a little bit bigger.
Yep. I'll make it bigger. I'm trying to figure out how I can. I was going to do it as a PDF, and then I decided not to mess with it anymore right now, but so that I wouldn't have all this lovely margins. Yep. Can you see this? Good. Okay. So this is not super pretty yet, but let's just go through some of the things that I saw. So anything in this kind of summary is related to things that either are in AZ-PIERS data set now or are new elements that we have not at all decided what's going to happen with. I just want to stick them in there so you guys know about them. And they're related to some of the stuff we already collect, but it does not mean they're going to be part of the new 351 data set for Arizona for AZ-PIERS. If your agency collects other things, for example, a bunch of e-payment fields, you're going to want to check out the changelog on NEMSIS for that information. Since we don't at the state, and it's not part of what AZ-PIERS requires, it's not something I'm going to cover in this changelog. So this just relates to stuff that's already in, if you go on our ADHS AZ-PIERS website, under data dictionaries, you'll see like a list of what the required, a few recommended, a few optional, but kind of like the data elements we would like to see or require to see, depending on the run. This relates to those kind of, that list and what has potentially changed. There's a lot of minor changes too that are not going to mean much to anybody, but I wanted to put them in there anyway. So it only covers stuff on the AZ-PIERS data set list. There's not going to be necessarily every single little change. I did try to put comment and note changes in, just that I could have missed something very, very small. I tried to comb through all of it. And I wanted to mention too, once again, that the 351 AZ-PIERS data set has not been fully determined yet at all. You know, we're going to have to do some work looking at what the statutes and rules say and make sure, because we have to stay in compliance with that with our data set. So there'll be a process, but I think when you guys see this, you will not be as, if you were worried about 351 and kind of thinking if you could retire before it happens, it's not as bad as the other one. Okay, so E-Airway 08, you guys use this, it's airways complications encountered. Obviously not all agencies. I think this would only be ALS agencies anyway. There's going to be a new pertinent negative, not reported, available. So that wasn't there in 350. You'll just have a new additional value. Anything in gray is basically things that are minor, but I wanted to put them in here. We are not, as a state, reporting to CARES currently. CARES is like share, but at a national level. But they updated the link. There's a change, and I wanted to just put it in there since it's a data element we do use. But we do not. We may down the road report to CARES as a state, but we don't currently. All right, E-Arrest 03, resuscitation attempted by EMS. The definition has changed. It's like it said by EMS, and now it says by any EMS. So it's just a minor change, but depending on how you use that data, how you interpret it, Almost all of these changes pretty much came out of suggestions from states, which came out of suggestions from agencies and users. But sometimes there's stuff that is contradictory or there's an issue with something. But for the most part, this is all you guys. In fact, there's at least one thing in there that definitely came out of our state that I brought up. So yeah, because I think it'll help with documentation. So ERS 09 is type of CPR provided, and they removed one value, which is this particular one, compressions hand only CPR was deprecated. There are other values in there that can be selected that are exactly the same. And that's why nationally they decided to remove it. It's a democracy and we all vote. So sometimes I vote to not take things out and they get taken out anyway, but there is another way to document exactly this in there. So hopefully this won't cause too much of a problem, but in 351, this won't be available anymore. And if your vendor has it, then you just need to make sure that you've mapped it to an acceptable value on our side. Okay. ERS 14, date time of cardiac arrest. There are some new pertinent negatives. So unable to complete an approximate, which I'm very excited about approximate, because that was always kind of like, you don't want to document something when you know it's not exactly right, even though the definition says to approximate. I think share says to approximate. It's like, but do you feel comfortable doing it? So that way you can put a date time in there and you can note that it is approximate if you're more comfortable with that. ERS 20, 21, and 22, just links update for CARES, which doesn't, like I said, necessarily apply to us. E-dispatch 01, that is a mandatory data element. So that's one you have to fill out. Dispatch reason, they've just added 4 new values. Hanging, strangulation, asphyxiation, if I can say that. Intoxicated subject, EMS requested by law enforcement, active shooter. So these are just things that I think, I don't know, I won't say all agencies, I'm sure a lot of agencies have it filled out potentially by their dispatcher CAD center. And for those that you don't know, you have 4 new options. The next 3 are also, or the next 2 are both dispatch ones, and all they did, these are optional elements anyway. They're not required, but they are in our AZ-PIERS status as optional. They had a name update, slight definition update, and an ID update. So I don't know why. It says patient acuity, but okay. So, and this one has an updated link. You probably don't use these, but if your CAD fills it in, just be aware. Now we're moving on to disposition. So it's also an optional element, but we do collect it. Destination country. So there absolutely are cases where people are being flown to another country, you know, perhaps they're being moved out of a hospital back to their home country. Like, so it happens. And there's just an updated link there. So nothing super spectacular. Okay, so here's one that we do require. It's it had been called final acuity. So they've changed the name, not the data element. So just the name of the element has changed. It probably is not going to affect you. Most vendors don't change the name in their reporting system so that it messes with your reports. But just be aware, it's now going to be called acuity upon EMS release of patient. I'm sure that came out of the fact that there was some confusion with final acuity because you don't really know what happened after you leave the hospital. So upon release from patient, and also the definition's been updated to comply with that. So reason for choosing destination, there's just an updated definition there. Same thing with unit disposition. Transport disposition, once again, they updated the descriptions. So they used to just use the word unit, and now they have in their unit/agency, because it comes up that some agencies have several units on the thing. Is that the same as a different agency? So now it's either whichever your state wants to use. And then reason for refusal, they've added a new value. This one came out of Arizona. So for those of you, and I totally get it, who are like, the patient left in the middle of they hopped out of the ambulance literally and like ran. Now you got a value for that. So patient elopement for a reason of refusal, when basically you basically are a transporter. You're starting to transport, but you never make it to your destination and you don't have a destination time. And how are we going to figure out why that is? This would be the reason, is they took off. So We'll see how we work that into our validation rules, but I think it'll help with the situations like that we get, which happen more often than I realized when people started talking about it. So, E-exam 13, back and spine assessment finding location. The 2 new values have been added, flank left and flank right. E-exam 16, extremities assessment. They've added, I won't read through all of them, but you can see that they have added 7 new values. They haven't taken anything away. A lung assessment, they just corrected a spelling error, but it was in their change log, so I thought I'd mention it. E-exam 24, chest assessment finding location. They have removed 2 values. So left posterior and right posterior will no longer be accepted, or you can map it to a accepting. I don't know what my word, I made a typo there. Oh, value. There we go. Chest assessment, they removed a value and then they updated the description to correct a spelling error. So they deprecated or removed, tenderness general from the chest assessment. For barriers to patient care, they updated the definition slightly. And then medical surgical history, E-history 08. And there's going to be several of these where I talk about they updated the ICD-10 pattern, now accepting U codes. So there's this whole pattern, and there are some codes, if you guys are familiar with, where the system would reject them. Some ICD-10 codes saying, hey, that's not allowable. And some of them are U codes. The only one I could think of off the top of my head, and I'll look up more examples that are better, was I think some of the COVID codes, for example, were U codes, and we couldn't use them because the pattern, like the computer format of it, said, no, those codes, we don't accept the codes that start with a U. And they certainly still have restrictions on what they accept for this, but now the codes that start with a U are acceptable. So that's something probably more that I'll try to see if there's anything we really feel like we're missing, but explore that with your own data also. There's probably a couple things. All right. E-history 17, alcohol drug use indicators. We use this one a lot. They've added 2 additional values, bystander/family reports drug use, bystander/family reports alcohol use, and divided them out, which I can see because they're not the same thing. This data element is only recommended. It's not required currently. It's current medication frequency. You do not have to fill this out, but in 351, they basically updated the value labels. Instead of QI, it's Q1 hour. Instead of TAD, it's TID. Which, I mean, I know just from looking at pharmacy stuff that this is more of a general lingo. I don't know exactly why they changed it, but I'm assuming it to be in line with some format. So it'll show up differently. If you've relabeled your stuff in your system, it probably won't change your label. Generally, they don't. So decide if you want to update your label or if your label is just the way you want to keep it anyway. But the official value will be saying this now. Okay, here is a new data element. It is highlighted in yellow because I just want to let you know I have no idea if we will be adding this as a data element to AZ-PIERS, but I feel like these are important things to just kind of put out there. So this one is E-medications 13, medication administered by another unit. And for those of you that have done this for a long time, you probably know there's one that says there's medication administered prior to. Then you also know that we have a lot of medications that are actually administered at the same time you're on the scene. And the time rules don't like that because you're saying you didn't give it, but it's given during the time you're there. So this data element, like I said, I'm not indicating whether we're doing this or not, but it is a way to basically say the answers are yes and no. Was it given by someone else, by another unit? Doesn't have to be another agency, could be another agency, could be another unit while you're on the scene. And I think that'll help us with a fair amount of stuff. And we can decide too if we want to use it for fire-based agencies when they get on the scene and then transfer to their own agency and have it all on one record. I think we could probably find a way to use that. And that'll make, I think, a lot of people very happy if we can figure out how to do that. A date time of signature, just an updated definition. We talked about this one previously. Gender has been deprecated nationally, but there's no change at the state level. It's still required. So put it on there because it's in the change log. Patient race. There are 3 new pertinent negatives: refused, unresponsive, and unable to complete. So that'll be helpful. There's also a new value, and this is a national change. Like this is other, I can't remember. I think they go with the office of, no, I can't remember now. I'll have to look it up. But basically we go by a national standard in this. So the new additional value is Middle Eastern or North African, which is before I think people gathered it under maybe Asian. So that one will just be a new value added, nothing's taken away. Patient age, new pertinent negative, also very helpful. So hopefully you're filling out the date of birth and it'll automatically calculate the age. If you're putting in the age without the date of birth, we're assuming you're having to estimate because you cannot ask or cannot find out and there's no documentation and no one to tell you. It's super important because we really do need to know if someone's approximately a teenager, approximately in their 40s or approximately in their 80s. It does matter for when we do our distributions. So in those cases, now you can put the age if you don't have the date of birth, and you can put approximate so that it's just, we're assuming it's probably approximate, but this allows you to specifically say, I'm not saying this is right, I'm saying this is approximate. So that will be available to add with the age if you do that. We are not adding these, I can tell you that, just because, I mean, you can always send them to us. When these come up, if you want to fill them in, you're welcome to send them. We will not reject the data for sending it, but this will not be added as far as unless someone tells me I don't know why we would add this to our thing. So ePatient 23, it's a new element. It's basically the suffix like junior, senior, the third. It's a text field. It's a free text field. I think it has up to 50 characters. So it's something that you're welcome to use and it'll be available in 351, but we're not going to be adding this. Patient's preferred language. This is going to be a pick list with like a code, like I think ENG is English. So it's not a total text field, but this is also something I don't see as adding as required for AZ-PIERS, but you're welcome to fill it out. And this may be something really helpful for your agency. I mentioned this before, there's a new sex data element, ePatient 25. This will be added as optional. And then eProcedures 03, which is the procedure performed, they just increased the maximum number of digits you can have, so not probably super impactful for anybody. Another new data element that is available, like I said, I have no idea if we will be adding this. We're going to have to, look at the rules and see what's valuable and allowed. It's airway placement technique. Obviously, this will only apply if you're actually doing airways, but it gives just some basic information here. It is. They're recommending it to be collected at the state level. And the definition is the manner and equipment used to place these advanced airway. And these are the current values that will be available for that data element. Another new one is procedure performed by another unit. So this is just like the new one added for medications, right? Medications administered by another unit. This is same idea where it was done by somebody else, potentially at the same time you were there. Type of service requested, just an updated comment, so no big deal. Type of response delay, there's a new value, out of service area response, which I think would actually be really useful because although with eResponse 05, the value of 911 is actually now emergency response within your response area. I don't know if everybody uses it like that. And I also don't know if people have ever really looked at relabeling it since it's the same code. So this might be a kind of a nice way to be able to pick out if you're responding outside your area, because for things like HB 2609 and things like that, or just when you run reports in general, or we don't necessarily know what's out of your area. So this would allow us to know that, but it's a response delay. So if you don't have a delay, you may not use it. If you are filling in your GIS coordinates, there's just an updated pattern. The only thing this means, because obviously you guys aren't typing this in, is it will allow, the standard was changed to allow a more, since with an accuracy of a meter, so a higher pinpoint. Incident country, updated link. Also eScene 24, updated link. eScene 25, once again, new data element. I don't know if we're adding this or not. And this one is transferred patient care to from agency. It's part of a grid where they talk about first agency on scene and all of those. And these are the answers available. I can't quite figure out why we would use this one, that value, since you would know that from the other stuff, but I'm sure there was a reason. And some of the other ones could be kind of useful, but that is there. E situation 9 and 10, those are primary symptom and other symptoms. Once again, just adding the ability to put in those ICD-10 codes. Same thing with E situation 11 and 12, which is provider's primary impression, secondary impression, cannot accept U codes. Initial patient acuity just has this updated definition, a comment, and an updated link. The justification for transport encounter, this is a text field, and this is going to be for transfer encounter, sorry, would be more for interfacility transports. It's optional anyway, it just has an updated comment. Unit back in service date time is mandatory, but they just corrected a grammatical error in the definition. So we're almost done. This one is kind of strange, so I just wanted to let you know. Look, I made a typo in there. So stroke scale result is the new name of eVitals 29. It was previously called stroke scale score, which is hard to say quickly. So was stroke scale score, and it is right now in 350 stroke scale score, and it's going to be stroke scale result. And the values haven't changed. This is that one where it's like not conclusive. I can't remember the other ones, but basically it's not a number. It's just saying, is this positive or not? Like, do you think this is a stroke? And then stroke scale type is only getting an updated value description and 3 new values. So that's the one, you know, they've got, the old was fast ed. Now it's just fast. 3 new ones will be the VAN. And I know there's a couple agencies that have been wanting this for a long time. So yeah, VAN will be on there. And Belfast. So we'll have, like I said, separate fast ed now. Or BFast, sorry, not Belfast. I can't read. And the last change, and like I said, this is a new data element, and I don't know if we'll be adding it. I would kind of think so, based on the fact that it's basically this data element, but now with the actual score. So eVitals 34 is stroke scale score. So it has the name, that isn't confusing enough. It has the name of the previous data element that now has changed its name, but it's a new element. It's got pertinent negatives like unable to complete and refused, but it allows you to do a number, a score from 0 to 42 is what it accepts. So those are the changes that I wanted to highlight that are present in 351. Like I said, if you guys collect other things, I can give you a link, but you may want to refer to the change log, you know, if you payment stuff. I didn't put anything in here that we don't at least collect as optional. And then I put in some potentially interesting new data elements will be available. We're almost out of time, so that was good. All right. Does anybody have any questions? No, that was a lot. And I'll provide either this format or something slightly, oops, sorry, something slightly prettier. And then I'll just mention before we get off, since we're at 11, we're not going to go over the last item. I'll do that probably next time. But when you submit codes, we do have some generic codes that we accept, partly because if you're going to a nursing home or an urgent care, if you don't want to have to specify which one, like with a specific code each time, you can use a generic code and just put the name in. We also have a couple like other EMS location, which I think is EMS 0001. And the problem I've seen, and some of you guys got reports on this, was some of those codes are getting overused or used inappropriately. So existing hospitals that should be getting their patient record, and how they do that is you send in that patient record with the proper destination code, and that's how the system knows that hospital should be able to see that record. And that's how we know it actually went to an acute care hospital. If you send in that generic code, 0001, or there's an unspecified acute care code kind of for when we're in between trying to add a new facility, those hospitals will never see those records because the code is telling the system that that's not theirs. That's not, you know, University Medical Center Phoenix's, that's some other one. And I think it's partly happens when we get a new facility added and then somebody puts in the old code kind of to get by, or like a generic one, and it never gets updated. And sometimes I honestly don't know how people sometimes end up using them, but please keep an eye on that. We'll go over it more later, but I definitely went through and saw a bunch of acute care hospitals that should have been using a different code. I also saw a lot of ones where they came in with a correct code, but then the destination type was not right. Like, so someone would send something to a hospital, but then they would tell us in the field that it was a nursing home or something, which doesn't make sense. So keep an eye on that too, what your record is sending over as far as destination type. Make sure it matches what that actually is, because even though we actually know in our system what a lot of them are, we use that field partly because, as you guys know, when you go to a hospital, some hospitals have like 6 or 7 different things going on. They may have a rehab within their hospital that also does something else. And so we allow you to do that, but if it's not giving us the right information, it's literally going to get categorized as something completely different. So just keep an eye on that. If you have questions, let me know. I'm going to try to dig into that more. It's a little harder. I can't do it manually because you have to pick through everything. But some of you got reports on that, so that's one of the things we were trying to fix. All right. We're done. If anybody has any questions or anything, I'll stay on for a little bit afterwards. We don't have a date picked for our next EMSRUG meeting, but I'm hoping we can do one probably when we have a next kind of big change to talk about. So probably around August or September. And that's it. Thank you all for joining, and thank you for the call. And I know not everybody could be here for the whole thing, but we have a recording that will be up later. And if you want to listen to it, for now, I can't imagine anybody wanting to. And we'll have some minutes to come out later too. If you have any resources,